Peace and greetings, family. Peace and greetings. Goddess Queen Jamila Asata or Set here with you all today. And yeah, just getting my life together. Give me 1 second so you can see me. All right, give thanks and praise. How are you? I hope you're well. As Mama Leslie would say, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, wherever you're tuning into. Today, we are definitely discussing more about life after repatriation, life after moving to Africa. My name is Goddess Queen Jamila, and I have lived on the continent for 4 years. I spent the first 2 years on the continent traveling to a variety of countries. To date, I have been to Egypt, Senegal, Gambia, Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, Togo, and I now live in Tanzania. So there's a lot of differences between all the countries. I have friends in places I've never been to. I have friends in Madagascar. I have friends in Zimbabwe. I have friends in Mozambique, Angola. There are so many differences between the countries. It's more than I can articulate even in a few sentences. And if you watch one of my previous videos, I talk about how I equate the countries to personalities, like to people. Like this country is like this person. Like for example, if I'm going to talk about a country like Nigeria, then I would talk about it would be a male and he would be dapper. He would be a well-dressed male. He would be a businessman. He would also be a party man. He would be a millionaire. He would have family investments and come from a big family. Like there is a personality. And so in essence, because there's a personality attached to each country, there's also specific type of people who are attracted to each country, right? So the person that you would see migrate to a place like Nigeria would be very different from a person who would migrate to a place like Benin. Even though they're close together, like they're not too far apart from each other, they're totally different. And so there's so much to think about. There's so much to consider if you're thinking about repatriating to the motherland. And we're going to talk about some of the honesty behind what this repatriation journey is actually like from a very real and genuine perspective. And why do I have to say very real and genuine perspective? I have to say that because there is so much misinformation on the internet. There's so much misinformation, and forgive me, my mouth is so swollen. I had surgery not too long ago, so I'm working my way through it. But there is so much misinformation on YouTube. And I'm just going to speak on that before we dive into today's topic. We also have a guest who has also lived on the continent for about 3 years. So I'm sure he'll make his way in when the time is right. But let's talk about the misinformation for a moment. I have met many people over the years who have come to Africa as a result of someone or something that they've seen on YouTube. And whether they started subscribing to a particular channel or subscribing to a particular person, they formed an opinion about living in that country just based off of narrow information. And then they went on to almost build a whole life around the slivers of information that they received from that online channel. In addition to that, what I've seen is that these people will even create fantasies in their minds of a relationship with that particular person, a friendship. Like, oh, when I come there, this person is going to help me. This person is going to be my friend. This person is going to be there to support me. And the reality is that's not often the case. Um, that's not often the case at all. A lot of these people who you will see with massive followings, I don't have a massive following yet. And I might never have a massive following. Massive, when I'm speaking about massive, I'm speaking about millions of followers. Okay. So a lot of people who you all see with, six figure numbers of followers, 7-figure numbers of followers, they post content because they are entertainers and content creators. They're not posting content that is true, that is authentic, that is honest. Sometimes they lie about how much housing costs. They lie about what life is really like. Let me tell you something that only people living in the diaspora will really acknowledge. Only people who are living on the continent, who have come from the diaspora, will acknowledge. We we have acknowledged that the West has demonized and talked so much crap about Africa that a lot of us have been skeptical to share our negative stories because we don't want to add to that negative cloud of disgusting, toxic information or thought processes about the motherland. Okay. When you all were seeing all these videos about women being killed, women not safe, Black women are not safe in Africa, all this stuff. You all ate that up, ate it up. Not you, friend, but you all as in the internet world. The internet world ate that up. They might not have supported or really responded to the videos about the Ugandan kids who won scholarships to school, or the American, kids who came to visit Africa for the first time and their reactions. But when it came to violence, death, murder, ate, that guy ate. People are thirsty and very, very hungry to see negative information about Africa. Like, it's almost like it's been ingrained in the mind. So they need some form of validation. Okay. They need some form of validation to support these thoughts about, oh, something negative. Look, they're talking negatively about Africa. Like, let's tune into that. Why? Why are we so thirsty for that? Why are we so hungry for negative information? And a lot of it isn't our fault. It's a matter of programming. It's a matter of you've already been taught to believe X, Y, and Z. So then now these other things need to play into your belief systems. These other things need to play into the reason why you thought this. Oh, look, see, what's the famous thing? I knew I knew it was gonna be like this. Oh, goodness gracious. I don't even know why this video is showing up as private. I didn't make this private. Let me see if I can correct this, because we don't need this to be private. Give me 1 second, you guys. Yeah, so, all right. So there was so much talk about, oh, I knew, it was gonna be like that for people, and that's why I'm not going, and et cetera, et cetera. There was so much chat. There was so much what we can just go ahead and call shit talk about Africa. And are we surprised? We're not surprised. We're not surprised at all. Like, that's old news. It's old news. It's old news um that people are hating on Africa. That's old news. That you don't get a cookie for that. But at the same time, what it does is it speaks to the willingness that people have to continuously think something negative about the continent. That's what it's about. It's about the willingness that people have to continuously and again think, oh, look, it's not safe. Oh, look, you shouldn't go there. It's always something. It's always some crap. It's always some crap. It's always some crap. So I keep those things in a place of awareness, and I keep those things um I keep those things top of mind. I keep those things top of mind because we are the ones who've actually moved there. We're the ones who are actually living there. So if anybody's going to speak on those particular topics, those particular subjects, it would be people like us. It would be people who have had the experience. All right. It would be people who've had the experience. It would be people who have lived the life, not visited. A lot of people have visited. They stay there for 2 weeks. They are not good judges of what life is like actually living in a place. If you go and visit Texas for 2 weeks, you don't know what it's like to live in Texas. You know what it's like to stay there for a little while. But living there, and especially in a place like the Congo, living in the Congo, oh, that's different from visiting the Congo for 2 weeks, baby. That's different. So, all that to say that um, sharing the information that we need to share is sometimes it's a little challenging because we do feel like we have to gatekeep a little bit. We do feel like we can't do further damage. It is a matter of damage control. Even the conversation that we had recently with those repatriates that I introduced you to, um, that's more genuine and honest of a conversation than I've seen in many, many years, because people really aren't having those type of conversations in that way. People really aren't saying the things that need to be said. People really aren't forthcoming. And a lot of people have gotten burned as a result of that. A lot of people have come in, moved to these countries, packed up their whole entire lives, and they've gotten burned. They've gotten burned. They've gotten in serious trouble. They've gotten scammed. The scamming is it's like it's common now. They've gotten scammed. Money has been stolen from them. They've been deceived. I talked to a sister who um was blind, and she decided to move to Africa blind. She could not, legally blind, so she could not see. And she had I think she had a guide dog, but even having a guide dog in Africa is different. Having a dog, period, like it's different. All these things are different. All these things are different. So she had started listening to a couple online, and she thought that those people were her friends. Um, she had asked them, if they could help her with something, and told them, I'm coming at this time. And when she came, she tried to contact them. The place that she had booked, they didn't accept animals, even though it was a service animal. They did not accept animals, and she had to find another option. But speaking another language, not knowing the language, it went from bad to worse, and she was being kicked out onto the street. She was trying to reach the people who she had connected with, to no avail. She could not reach them. Then, to make matters worse, um, she couldn't reach her translator at the time. It just really became an entire situation. And Those are not things that we want for you. We don't want you to move over to the continent and be in a bad situation. We don't want you to move over to continent and find yourself in a very uncompromising position. And to make a long story short, with that particular sister, they were able to get in touch with her translator. And then at a certain point, she ended up entering into relationship with her translator. And that same person that she entered into a relationship with ended up stealing from her. It's not safe. It's not always safe. Uh-oh. One moment. So, yes, this is the reason that we encourage you to book a tour. This is the reason that we encourage you to pay people to guide you through the continent before you just jump out the bando and move. I know that that's something that you've seen before. Oh, so and so just went out to whatever, whatever, and they just made it work. I know you've seen it before. And it's possible, but is it advisable? It's the difference between, our mothers had us in a stable relationship and our mothers had us as single mothers and had to struggle. When you go through a particular situation in survival mode, you figure it out. But would you suggest that for your children or would you suggest that for your grandchildren? Would you want that for other people? We want to live a soft life. We really want to live a soft life. So today, some of the things that we're discussing have to do with lessons on finances, lessons in business. Whew, just money things are a really big topic because we find that there are trends. Like everybody's repeating the same kind of thing. There are trends with living on the continent, making money. And there are things that people do while there, but if you're planning on moving to Africa, you definitely do not want to go there to apply for a job. You don't want to go there to apply for a job. That's not what you want. Nobody is going and saying, I'm about to move all the way 100,000 miles away to live on the continent and work at a hotel. No. And let me explain why. Part of the reason that nobody's going over there looking for a job is because what they pay there is like peanuts in comparison to what you would be paid in a Western environment. Sometimes we have to wonder how people are able to even survive on those types of salaries, survive with that type of pay. And they're working full time. Full time in Africa means from sun up to sometimes the evening. And they're working 5 days a week, maybe with one day off. So nobody's trying to go over there and hustle themselves to death, get a job. That's not the way. Okay. Um, So the job thing is out. We not doing that. We not going over there to get a job. So then you have to ask yourself, well, what are the options? If I'm not going to get a job, then what are my other options? What else is there for me to do? Um, and you can definitely start a business, right? You can definitely start a business. You can definitely start, company. It's easy to start a business there. And today we're going to be talking to a brother who has a lot of insight to share when it comes to business, finances, working together and building. He started his own business. He moved to Africa about 3 years ago and started his own business. And he's a very intuitive brother, very humble. And he is also currently in the States right now visiting. So we're going to welcome into the room Eric, or Eric and Cozy, and tell him peace and greetings. Peace and greetings, brother. Peace and greetings. Welcome. And what you may uh what you may hear when he does finally come on and start speaking is he's from the South. He's from the South, so part of that Southern twang might be a little bit present, and we welcome it. So peace and greetings, brother Eric. Peace and greetings. Glad to have you on. Uh-oh, we can't hear your mic. You're not on mute anymore, but can't hear you yet. All right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear. Oh, that's a big old mic.
Yeah, it's a recording mic.
Wow.
I had it out of the actually I'm actually in the studio.
All right.
So
That
that's
thing's about the size of your head over there. It's a big mic.
a good recording. So
Yeah, I love it. Well, welcome,
welcome. Thank you.
Patty Busana. Glad to have you here. I know I asked you to come through at a very late notice, and thank
Yeah,
you for being willing to show up. It seems like that's how we do business. We do business late notice. It's like I need it tomorrow. Let's go. All right, we that's our foundation.
you're trying to get ready. You got to be ready.
Exactly. That's a big lesson that the states will teach you and continuously expects you to deliver on. Okay. Africa's a different story. Okay.
Yeah,
They gonna take their time and get ready. So
absolutely.
so first what I would like to do is I'd like you to introduce yourself to the people, to say, just your name,
Sure.
where you're from, where you're at currently, and where you lived on the continent.
Okay, my name is Eric Matthews. I go by Nkosi. Um, I'm from originally from Birmingham, Alabama, and that's currently where I am now. But I lived in Gambia, West Africa for 3.5 years.
Give thanks, give thanks. And with you living in Gambia, I guess we're gonna start with the question we started with the other podcast. What made you decide to move to Gambia in the first place?
Well, I needed a change. I come from a background where people are generally waiting on something outside of themselves to come and save them or to trigger change in their lives. And after going through, a continuous perpetual cycle of that, I decided to take my fate in my own hands and move shortly after the George Floyd incident
Hmm,
happened.
interesting. There was a sister on the other podcast who mentioned the same thing, that George Floyd was a trigger for her to also pack up and move. But the question is, with so many different options across the world, you got Costa Rica, you got Colombia, you got Brazil, you got Trinidad and Tobago, you got the world at large. Why Africa, and why specifically Gambia?
Well, let me say this before I answer that question. I think that this was something that was happening in me over and over and over again. And it was just a buildup. So the George Floyd was not just a trigger. It was something that was in addition to, because we have many George Floyds.
Mm,
We have many situations of injustice, if you will.
mm-hmm,
Getting to your question in terms of the answer, you said what made me move to Gambia.
mm-hmm,
Well, what made me move to Gambia, first of all, I had never visited the continent at all. And, but I knew that I wanted to go to Africa. Obviously, in America, they call us African Americans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so by that, growing up that you are from Africa. You,
Mm-hmm.
um, so in my selection and deciding where I was going, it was very, very simple. You know, I just wanted to go to a safe place where I didn't have to take a lot of shots, and I could get there very fairly quickly. So I looked at Tanzania, uh, some say Tanzania, some say Tanzania, but Tanzania and a couple other places. Nigeria was one that I looked at, Ghana, because they talked about, how Ghana was promoting us coming back. It was the only
Mm-hmm.
I knew at the time that were promoting us coming back. But I decided on Gambia for reasons that didn't really come to me until I actually started looking at Gambia. I was flipping channels one day and I seen a family by the name of the Bags. They actually go by the Bags. And they were just so transparent, so down to earth. And they just, start sharing things. So I kind of got sucked into, looking at their videos and everything. And as a result, my algorithms start popping up other YouTubers who were living there. And so when I finally started actually doing research for myself in terms of where I wanted to live, Gambia just became attractive because I didn't want to go leave from America and then go to, another place that was similar to America. I wanted to experience Africa. So the fact that it wasn't as developed was a plus for me because I knew that I wanted to start a business. And if I was going to start a business in an area that was not as developed, that there wouldn't be a lot of competition, I could bring my skill set and probably do good. And maybe over a 3 to 5 year period, establish something that was amazing. In addition to that, I didn't need a visa. I could actually get my visa there. And at the time, I didn't have my visa. So that was perfect. It didn't require any shots like yellow flu, shots or anything like that. So all of that became very inviting to me. And that's why I picked Gambia.
Those are really um, clear reasons. It shows that you put a lot of thought into it, that you did some research. You didn't just blindly choose it and say the vibes, um, which doesn't mean it's a bad thing to go off of the vibe, but I think a lot of people more than not do not have enough information or maybe a clear understanding of what this is, of what it's really like to be boots on the ground, to live in the United States. Talk to me a little bit about that transition, or live in Africa versus the United States. Talk to me a little bit about that transition because speaking for myself, I lived in other places. I stayed in other places before moving to the continent. So I don't think that, by and large, I represent a typical experience of an American moving to Africa. My parents are from Trinidad and Tobago. I've lived in Trinidad and Tobago. I've stayed extensively in Brazil. I've stayed extensively in the Dominican Republic. I've even stayed in Europe and Paris and in UK. So for me, being in a foreign environment, operating with foreigners, living outside of where I grew up, that I wasn't new to it. I was true to it.
Hmm.
It was still an adjustment, but I
Yeah.
was okay. Talk to me a little bit about being a first time resident of anywhere else but your home country and just some of the things that like you really weren't prepared for.
Okay. As you mentioned, I did not have. Do I need to turn on the light a little bit?
It's beautiful. I feel like it's nice. It has swag.
Awesome. So as you mentioned previously, I had never been you know, a resident in another country before that time. It was actually my first time. The only other experience that I had under my belt in terms of a foreign experience is staying 14 days in London. And literally, I had a problem with flying over that much water, which is why I didn't do it sooner. But you know, I kind of broke the ice going to London and staying there 14 days and kind of seeing what it was like to be exposed to the foreign land. And so, because I had expectations, I had preconceived notions about Africa, you know, I didn't allow that to detour me from making the move. I just knew that I had to do something different if I wanted different results. And so, so when I got there, to answer your question in more detail, it was an amazing and very intriguing experience. Um, you know, landing, hearing the accents, seeing the way they dress. Um, you know, I can remember one of the first things that I saw was women walking the streets with big baskets on their head, you know, and just found myself in the middle of the culture. It was amazing. One of the first things that I noticed um, that was evident was that it was a spiritual land. Um, I have spiritual gifts, which I believe everyone does. I don't think everyone is in tune with their spiritual gifts, but I was able to tell that it was a spiritual land because I felt it when I got off the plane, like immediately. I felt it, you know, and immediately I was able to see at that time even clearer than I had seen, you know, and spiritually is what I'm referring to. So the experience was just amazing. I remember maybe 3, 4 months in, I discovered that that was the land where the Kuta Kinte story happened. I didn't even know that when I moved there. Um, so I mean, there was so many things that was just kind of knocking me off my feet. The conversations that I would have with the locals about their tribes and where they came from and what the history was, and you know, all of that was just an amazing experience. It's an experience that I feel that every uh, you know, person of our descent should experience.
Well, wonderful. It's really interesting to hear you just admit, that there was so much even about the history that you weren't aware of, because that's always something that's so surprising to me. Um, and let me speak about that surprise, just touch on it. I
Mhm.
consider African American people, specifically African American people, for this body of group to hold uh, enclaves, hold small pockets of people who are so well versed, so historically aware, in terms of the history of Black people, the history of Africans in America, this history of the slave trade. In comparison to the rest of the world, I would say that America hosts so many of us scholars. We have whole degrees in African American studies. But it's so odd that many of the people who actually make it to the continent and live and relocate to the continent have no idea of, the history of these places. They are completely
I
unaware.
think what drives us, or let me just speak for myself, I can't speak for everyone else, but
Sure.
what drove me is the educational piece of it all that I encountered in school, encountered in conversations with my parents and my peers about slavery and, you know, those types of things. I think that's kind of where most of our knowledge ends. You know, there's not a lot of um, interest in looking into the continent because of the propaganda, because of what has been shown to us on this side about Africa, you know, and that is that it's just, you know, big bellies, flies, wild animals, undeveloped land. It's not safe because of war, and all of these negatives. Um, so for an educated person like me to even be interested enough to do research on the countries, you know, um, never crossed my mind. I mean, it was just basically, I'm acknowledging the past of my ancestors and where I came from and how I got here, but I don't want to go there to live because all I was shown was that, every time I seen anything about Africa, it was, some sponsor trying to sponsor a child asking for money on this side so that they could eat, and surely I didn't picture myself going to a place like that where I could, wouldn't even have resources to eat that much.
And that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. We can absolutely understand um, just the connection and association with the motherland and scarcity has been heavy. That's been a heavy connection that's been made over the years. There's not enough food, there's not enough medicine, there's not enough. It's a whole it is propaganda, and that's a great way to describe it. But let's actually talk about let's dive in deeper and talk about your specific experiences with living in Gambia. Um, we started the conversation, just me and those who are watching, and shout out to those who are watching. We see your comments. Please feel free to like and subscribe and to share. We're live on YouTube right now. So we started out talking about resources, and I'm looking at my phone because I'm writing questions down and then I'm reading the questions that I've written down.
Sure.
But we want to talk a little bit about resources and specifically finances. Okay. The financial conversation does not come up enough.
Mhm.
And when I talk about finances, I mean all of it, from sustainability to starting out in a place like this and what your expectations should be like in terms of, bringing money and then generating money. And then even, leading on to business, leading on to employment, those types of things. Can you speak about that? Like I introduced you, you didn't hear my introduction, but I told the people that you not only moved out of the country and moved to Gambia, but you also started a business. So
Yeah.
let's start there and let's talk about the business that you started, what it was, what you were doing, and really what your lessons were around finances abroad.
Okay. Well, I come from a very humble background, and I think that has been a significant thing as it relates to me becoming allergic to being poor. Um, I don't like it. I don't like the feeling of it. Um, and I refuse to, experience it over a long period of time, just because of my background. So, what I did over the years was educated myself in various different ways, not just through the educational system, but just through experience and hands-on. So no matter where I was, I could survive. So that's what I got on the plane with. I got on a plane with, years and years of experience on how to survive because I started over so many times. I was prepared for it.
Can I ask you something, just so we can know a little bit more about you? What was your trade when you got on the plane, or what had you been doing career-wise before you left the States?
I was working at Bank of America in the mortgage department. And it's kind of crazy because before then, I had not worked a regular job or worked for anyone, you know, um, pretty much since 17, you know. I had a few jobs at 17, from 17 to maybe 20. And then at 21, I signed a major record deal, and that was my life for 17, 18, 19 years. And then leading up going to Africa, I wanted to, save, liquidate everything that I had because my mindset was I wasn't coming back. And so I knew that when I got over there, I would have to create um, some level of income if I was not going to depend on uh, income from here, which in retrospect, I feel like was a horrible mistake. Uh, um, And I'll share with you later why. But to get into answering your question, that's what I was doing. Pretty much my life had consisted of maybe 3 or 4 years working at Bank of America. And I had a fairly good life because I was still doing music at that time as well. So I would work Monday through Friday with Bank of America, and then on the weekends I travel around the country doing concerts and so forth. So I was living in a 4 bedroom gated community condominium, paying 2,000 just in rent a month alone. I was driving what I wanted to drive, had a great life, had a great credit score, and was headed to Africa with about 30,000 saved up. And so, and I've told this story before, so I won't make it long, but my son got in some trouble, and he had 2 cases against him that were assault with a deadly weapon charges. And this is a boy that I raised from 5 years old to 21 at the time. I had never had a record. He bought him a house on his own with no co-signer, $175,000 home. He was a general manager for Domino's, a pizza franchise. Um, and I just couldn't see him losing his life. They were trying to give him 20 years per charge for a weapon that nobody could find. And so, and it was in Texas. So, I don't even have time to go through the ramifications of, being charged like that in a place like Texas. But to make a long story short, um, I spent 26,000 of the 30,000 to make sure that he did not lose his life to incarceration for 40 years, and still decided to go to Gambia. So I was already starting at a disadvantage going, but I wasn't going to allow it to stop me. I was just kind of at that time fed up with what I had experienced in America.
Wow, that's a very intense situation.
Yeah.
So,
So I came to
yeah,
Gambia with $4,000.
yeah, clearly, I did the math. I carried the one, I subtracted again.
Carried the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's a very heartfelt but relatable story. A lot of us find ourselves doing a lot to protect our boys, and
Absolutely. But
yeah, it's a lot.
I knew that the skill sets that I had, that I could survive anywhere because I started over. My training ground was America.
Hmm.
I don't know whether there's a harder place to live, in my opinion. You know,
Probably Nigeria.
you're not educated. I don't know if you could. I mean, maybe I've never been in Nigeria,
Yeah.
but I would assume that you could survive if you were educated, and maybe had some connections, But Nigeria. When I think of Africa, and I can only go by my reference to Gambia, I fell on some hard times in Gambia, but I was still able to survive, uh,
Hmm.
just because how it's set up. But in America, if you don't have any money, you can't go up to nobody and negotiate, anything. You're just gonna have to be out on the street. If your lights get
Mm,
cut off, your lights get cut off. You're
right.
able to, then if you go for help, you have to have made a certain amount. You got to be in a certain tax bracket just to get help. So I mean, it's just a totally different. So I feel like because of being in that environment where it's like kill or be killed, or survive or not, it prepared me for what I had to face in Gambia.
Hmm. That's a very different perspective, to be honest, because most of the times when people find it hard to believe that as an American you decide to live anywhere else, they say everybody's trying to get into America. Everybody's trying to come over here. Why would I want to go? Okay, calm down.
Yeah.
Calm down, right? But the reality is there is a lot of immigration into the States, and there is a lot of fanfare around the States, but we can really just acknowledge that a lot of that is due to branding. America has a solid brand, and the brand that America holds, I compare it to Coca-Cola. You know, Coca-Cola has a solid brand. Coca-Cola is not an essential product. It's not an essential product. It's soda.
Yeah,
So it's not something that people need in Thailand. They
yeah,
don't need it in Cambodia. They don't need it in Congo. But yet Coca-Cola has reached its hands, its spiny fingers all across the globe. It has a reputation. It
mhm,
is consistent. It looks a certain way. You can recognize a Coca-Cola label if you're sitting on a bus and it's laying on the ground outside of your bus. You can in the mud, you can recognize a Coca-Cola label. So America is the same way. There's a brand associated with the USA, and that brand is what causes foreigners to say, yeah, let me go and take my chances. Um, is living in the States hard? No. I mean, yes, it is hard. It's
yeah,
absolutely hard. But is it doable? Yes. And for a foreigner who comes from a place where there are no jobs
mhm.
and no opportunities for advancement, and someone who's hungry, they can come over here and figure out a way and make a way out of no way. So, there's so many different perspectives. I would say that living in some of these other places are more challenging than the States simply because there are no jobs and there are no ways to get out. There's no way to get out. If you don't have the education or connections that you speak of, then what? You are sitting in the same loop in essence.
Want to give you two perspectives as well.
Sure.
I totally agree with what
Mm-hmm.
you're saying. I was saying it from the perspective of an uneducated African American. Now, for foreigners, when they come here, there are many programs that they can take advantage of that would not necessarily be available to people who were born here, who are African American, or of African descent, I should say. That's a better way to put it. Um, you know, a foreigner, I mean, if you go through the law books, you'll see that everybody has a right to what America has to offer, except for the non-citizen, which I'm speaking of is the American, the Black American, because they're not even considered a human. They're considered three thirds, three fourths, or something like that of a human. You know,
Two-thirds.
two thirds, yeah. So you have to have a soul, a body, I believe, a creed, a flag, and something else. But the fact that we call ourselves black is the very thing that causes us not to be looked at or recognized as a human being.
Let's do this because I don't want to forget the topic that we were on. I want to finish that and we can come back.
Sure.
But you mentioned a few things. You mentioned going to Gambia with $4,000.
Mhm.
You mentioned that you came to try and do something there in the Gambia versus doing something, I guess, stateside, and how that was a mistake.
Yeah.
So let's actually talk about those things because I really want to stay focused, that everyone who is watching this video and the people who I am sharing the video with, all of our viewers, they're thinking about coming to Africa and
Mm.
thinking about moving there. And we
Sure.
want them to really have the wisdom that we now have as people who have already taken that leap, made the plunge, lived there for some time, and now have valuable lessons to offer. So talk to me a little bit about moving to Gambia with $4,000. Were you moving there by yourself or did you come with your son? You mentioned that he had the case. Did you go
Well,
there by yourself? Or what tell us what happened after that?
he could not come because although he did not get incarcerated, we were able to get one charge dropped. The other charge was still attached to him and his record, pending a 3-year probationary period. And so if he didn't get in trouble in those 3 years, then he would be off completely, and the record would be expunged. So that's what happened with the son. So obviously he could not come because he's on probation or was on a probation at that time. And as a result, could not go out of the country. To answer your second question, I came with a wife and two other children. At the time, 12 and 10, and a wife of about 14, 15 years at that time.
All right. And so what were things like? We're speaking about finances, resources, income, business. What tell us a little bit about that. How did you start a business with just $4,000?
Yeah. So, well, when I got there, I discovered one thing to me, which was definitely a game changer, because I consider myself as a wordsmith. I'm very good with words. I'm very good with articulating what it is that I believe or think or want to communicate. And in Gambia, there is a culture of negotiation. Nothing is regulated that much. And when I say regulated, prices can change. The value of whatever you need can change based on the need of it and based on whether the person wants to give it to you for that price. So it's but that worked to my advantage because I'm very articulate. I can negotiate very well. And so I negotiated a place to stay, a short temporary place to stay. And I decided to break it up into a quarter, which is in America, in our mindsets are 3 months, and I said, okay, let me just try this. I have to do something. So let me try uh, um, negotiating because, as you know, in Gambia, it's either 6 months or a year. If you're going to stay anywhere for a long period of time, you have to pay 6 months in advance, which is totally not like that in America. You play by the month in America, and so in most places. So, I negotiated 3 months to stay in a place, 3 months to rent a restaurant, and the rest, I was just very careful with chipping off of it to eat, and take care of my family at the time. That was the plan. And the plan also was failing is not an option because when I run out of this 4,000, that's it.
So how did you turn 4,000 into anything else? You talk about starting a whole entire business. Like what did you, what, again, walk us through the process. What was going on?
Well, when I established a place, because it was told to me that it was impossible to really get a place, you know, um, without paying 6 months in advance. And I met a guy and, just began to talk to him and everything and told him that, what I was trying to do, I was going to start a business, so forth and so on. I needed the money, the bulk of the money to make the business work. But I will sign a contract for 6 months. I'll pay you three in advance, and I'll pay you the rest before the end of that 3 months. In my mind, that was based on the success of the business. So, in order to be successful in business, I knew that I was going to have to do something to make it work. So, I remember getting up one day and heading down to a place that was very popular at the time. It's called Motu's, and we were just going there to get something to eat and actually meet them because those were some of the people that we've seen in addition to the bags. And got up with intentions. We did our meditations, so forth and so on, and just attracted. I just felt like something great was going to happen that day. I set my intentions, I released them in the atmosphere, and we went there, sat down, actually met Molly and his wife at the time. And lo and behold, they started talking about a restaurant that they had that had been empty for a year because of COVID. And so, as we begin to talk, how it started was he asked me, what was I thinking about doing? And me and my wife at the time, we had discussed starting a restaurant because our kids were complaining about the food. So we were like, well, let's do what we love doing. I like cooking. let's do a soul food place. And so when we got to the restaurant and talked to Molly, just in the conversation, he just brought up the fact that they had a restaurant full of equipment sitting there collecting dust. And that's how the conversation started, which I believe that we manifested basically. I don't think it was by chance. So, we talked through everything, what the negotiations would be, what the prices would be. I shared my situation, and based on that, I said I would only be able to do 3 months because at that time I had never run a restaurant before. But like I said, I have skill sets in the area of customer service. I know how to good customer service. I worked in the bank. I know how to crunch numbers and budget, and I have charisma. And so, I took the deal. We signed. He gave me the keys, and we went in there and did maybe 2.5 weeks of cleaning because it had been equipment sitting there, not being used. And we started. And from there, I shifted to my promotions and marketing plan, which included a YouTube channel that I started before I left from America. Because I was already thinking about what could we do to generate income. And one of the things I wanted to do was, create a channel documenting African American family moving from America to Gambia. So we started that channel 2 months before we left, and not to realize that that channel was going to play a very important role in the promotions and marketing plan for the restaurant. So what ended up happening is the way we were rolling, we didn't want to reach out to anybody, and try to make something happen. We wanted it to be strictly on our ability to manifest. So once we got into the restaurant, it was the same thing. We started promoting on our channel, and one day the bags popped up without us reaching out to them or anything. They heard about it, they popped up, and just such a warm spirit. And they talked to us. It was like, man, I've been wanting soul food for a long time. Would you mind me doing an interview with you? Just on the spot. I mean, I just met him, didn't know he was going to show up or anything. So he went through the whole restaurant. Glad that we cleaned that place like crazy because he went into the bathroom and he was like, man, if in the restaurant, if the floors on the bathroom are clean and everything in the bathroom is clean, they clean. In fact, this is going to be my place from now on. If you support me, I want you to come and support them. And from there, the place blew up, you know, and so I would say by the second month, we had a regular customer base that was coming in. So by the end of the month, of that third month, I couldn't see eye to eye at the time with the owner of the place in terms of the finances.
Are
And
you speaking about the owners as in Molly and his wife his
yeah,
at
yes,
the time? Okay.
we could not really come to an agreement that I was comfortable with because even though I made money, it was like I'm looking long term because I don't have anything from America that's coming, 401k or a continuous something every month, so I had to make it in Gambia and survive off of Dallas. So we couldn't come to an agreement, and I wasn't willing to pay what they were asking for at the time, which I'm not upset about that. It's neither here or there. I just wasn't willing to pay that, and put my intentions out. Met another guy. He introduced me to another guy on the other side of town who had a restaurant on the beach, and the exact same thing happened. I was able to get a place that was bigger with all of the equipment in there because it had just sitting there collecting dust. Because I'm doing this now, Queen, I'm doing this in the middle of COVID. So there are not a lot of In fact, everybody around me is telling me, why are you starting a business in the middle of COVID? In that first place that I was in, it was a tourist trap, meaning that there were 9 major hotels around and none of them were open. There were 6 businesses in the square that I was in, and I was the only one open. So, but
Do you
again,
feel like that helped you to make money though? Like, do you feel like
I
the
don't.
the
I don't.
okay,
I feel
okay.
and the reason why is because it was so tucked away in the back. I mean, you had to know where you were going to go there. And everybody at the time knew the whole area was shut down. So I had to really come up with a promotions and marketing plan. And you know, the credit should go to the bags for um, really getting it out there. Now we were passing out flyers, we were, doing things. So I think eventually it would have picked up, because I had started getting, I think we went from maybe when we started the channel, we went from 0 to about 400 or 500 before we got there. So those were people who knew about, us being there. The same people that I was advertising to as far as the restaurant was. Then I met a guy, this was a Gambian. I met a guy, I went into a place in Senegambia, and I seen how this owner, who was Italian or definitely a different descent, he was treating the manager, who was a Gambian, in my opinion, very disrespectful. And so I got so mad about it, I took my family and I was going to move out. I was going to not move out, but leave. And he stopped me and was going out of his way to keep me there so that they could have my business. So I ended up talking to him, and to make a long story short, um, he ended up being my manager. I just asked him, you know, do you like the environment you work it in? And that was how I was able to get the rest of my staff. He hired my whole staff, and that's how I got started.
So now that we have gone into painting a picture of how you're building these blocks one by one, talk to me about where the restaurant is. Now you left off at, this guy has you found another restaurant.
I
It's
found,
been it's
yeah,
been 2 years, I think, since or 3 years since that, since opening. And you had this major shout out, you had the influx of people. Talk to me about where the restaurant is now. And I guess if you're speaking to someone who again doesn't know, what would be the advice that you would give about starting business in their country of choice?
sure. So the second location that I moved to was the location that we operated for 2.5 years. And I ended up shutting the restaurant down at the time. And so, but that property was actually on the beach. The first property was close to the beach. We could actually see it, but this property was actually on the beach. A lot of more land. It was like 100 by 150, in terms of space. So because of the influx of people, we just, created our marketing plan and wanted to make it as comfortable as possible. So we created uh, um, a tent environment where people could come and sleep overnight in the tents. I think we had about 10 tents out there, and it was fenced in on the property. We had the actual restaurant. We had 28 umbrellas with beds. We had boats. We had a garden there, and an entertainment area that seated maybe about 150 people. And because we had such backgrounds in music and those kinds of things, we utilized the skills, because I mean, they started it, but we had to maintain it if people were going to continue to come. So these are things that we came up with. We also opened up the facility for others that wanted to come and do different things, aerobics, all kinds of different things. So that's how we were able to maintain it. Of course, we kept on, letting people know on the channel. And as a result, we met people from everywhere, from Japan, from Holland, from Sweden, from London, Jamaica, Canada, of course, America, the list goes on and on. Um, and to answer your second question, I shut down the restaurant because at the time, I was having some internal problems with my family, and we did not see eye to eye on some things, and so I ended up running the business by myself, and I just could not handle, even though I had 9 employees, I could not handle, trying to manage them, manage making sure that the food was there consistently and some of the other things that went on with the business without her being around, being there, you know. And so I ended up shutting the restaurant down and really getting into my first love, which is music.
And tell us about like just what did you learn from that experience? Like what were your
What I
takeaways? If you speaking to your son and your son's telling you, Dad, I'm about to move and I want to start a business or I want to or even I want to start a restaurant on the beach,
Mhm.
what would be your pieces of advice for someone who has no idea and no experience?
Oh man, I got so much to say. I'm gonna try to condense it. First of all, be competent in the area that you want to start business in. Don't start the business on foreign land with so many odds against you. Number one, you're starting in a foreign land. That could be an odd that's against you because you got to connect with the locals. You got to connect with those people. Um, but be competent. For me, I had never run a restaurant before. I was in banking and music. So, but again, I knew customer service, I knew, the structure of business, and I knew what I wanted to experience if I was a customer. And so I was competent enough. This is why I'm saying be competent in, what it is that you need to do. I would say also do your research as far as the government and how they're going to interact with you doing a business being a foreigner. you know um find out everything that you need to find out, from taxes to what's legal, in operating your business, all of the ins and outs, because those are things I had to learn along the way. you know um I had officials visit my restaurant, at one point on a consistent basis, because I was getting so much attention. They wanted to know, was I paying taxes? You know, they wanted to know, was my licenses in place? They wanted to know, did I do bacteria test on my employees? Were they healthy enough to handle the food? I mean, these are all things.
And had you done those things? I mean, were there bacteria tests and
Well, what happened was, there was someone, fortunately, and this is another piece of advice, to the guy that actually rented me the restaurant owned 6 in Gambia. So he became a mentor to me. And these are things that he shared with me and things that I inquired about because I'm pretty savvy with business. When you're coming from a place like America, all of the stipulations and red tape you got to go through with to establish business there. And just because I'm in another country, I'm not operating any differently. So, I pulled from him in terms of trying to understand what I needed to not be bothered by the government, because I wasn't in compliance. So yes, 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 and yes to all of those questions. They had their tests done, and I had all the contracts there. I was paying them, according to the compliance, according to being in compliance with the laws of Gambia, so forth and so on. But what I'm saying is, My advice is to know those things, because I also know other people who started businesses who did not, go through those details and ended up losing a lot of money, being threatened to be shut down, just a lot of extra stress that could have been avoided. But there were also some lessons I learned that I wasn't prepared for. Contractors that I had to come in to work on the place, people that I hired, you know, um, and just learning the culture there and what their mindsets are, you know. So there were definitely a lot of lessons on both ends from the mentor and mistakes that I made.
Yeah. Um, just to let you know, we have a couple of comments that are jumping off in the chat box on YouTube.
Sure.
Um, one of the one of the commenters writes that SFJ, what is SFJ?
That's soul food
Oh, okay. So is a soul food
joint.
joint? Okay, got it. I never even knew the name. You never even said the name of your place. But obviously you have a supporter here who says that SFJ was a necessity for us American repats. We needed a place to go and gather, and SFJ provided that, as well as delicious food and awesome mac and cheese. All right, you gotta snap to that. Okay, because everybody don't make the same type of mac and cheese, right? Um,
That was our
so somebody go ahead.
I said that was our bestseller, mac and
Oh,
cheese.
of course. Like if it's good, it's good. If it's good, everybody, yeah, everybody want that. I even had that at my wedding
Yeah,
because my cousin flew in and she was like, "You want me to?" Of course I do. Okay, give thanks and praise in the Gambia. Make that mac and cheese, baby. So, another comment says saying that they visited SFJ once and they enjoyed it. Another someone else says I was a regular there, and then we have somebody asking where is the equipment today for the restaurant.
the equipment, the pieces that I own, because I didn't own everything over time.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, I bought a lot of equipment
Mm-hmm.
that I actually liquidated. Um, and so that's what happened to the equipment.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Now, any other lessons before we move on? I know that I'd asked you about what would you say to someone who is starting a business, just, the business that you started, and you gave a lot of good tidbits there and a lot of things that I'm sure people will find useful about doing business in a foreign country, especially when it comes to the regulations. Um, so anything else you want to share? And just something I'm curious about
Mhm.
is really the dynamic of you being so reliant on local people to run your business. Is there anything there that you can offer in terms of advice? Because if somebody's never lived outside of the States before and they're coming, then forging these relationships with someone local might be very challenging. So anything else, and what would you say about that?
I'm a critical thinker.
Mm-hmm.
So in my business plan, because we were in COVID around the world, I knew that I could not depend on, or I was not willing. I didn't feel like it was a wise business decision to depend on tourists, because
Mm.
it could come there at the time
Mm-hmm.
of COVID. So the obvious choice was I need to lock into the locals. It's the only way that I'm going to survive. And I knew within the locals, and this is also advice as well, but I knew within dealing with the locals, they stay there. They wasn't traveling in and out. Some were, but for the most part, they stay there. So I made my prices affordable for them, you know, and I started to get into the culture. Now, this is business slash personal, becoming personal with the locals, learning the language, learning the history, really getting into the culture, attending some of the things that they felt were important to attend, like naming ceremonies and, those kinds of things. Um, it works for better rapport with them when you're dealing with them on a personal level or as a customer, you know. So I would advise people to, if they're going to an area, to, get some history on the area, link with the people, understand their culture, understand their mindset, understand, whatever it is that you're trying to offer as a service, how it would impact them. If it's needful, is there a great demand on it? You know, and supply that demand with the highest level of excellence possible, regardless of what level of excellence you think the people are operating in. So that would be a bit of advice. I would say also come financially prepared. Do your researches and come financially prepared to do what it is. I would say also, and lastly, to make sure that when you leave from where you're coming from, that you have a plan for sustainability over a long period of time, even if that money is coming from where you're coming from, you know. Um,
Can you give some examples of I'm scratching my head almost kind of intuitively because I think that people don't know what that means, like sustainable income in Africa. Like if I've never even visited there, I really can't know what's sustainable there. So now that you have had 3 years of experience under your belt, what would you suggest to someone coming in for the first time?
Well, when I say sustainability, I'm not just talking about from Gambia. I'm talking about from wherever you're coming from, because you have experience there, so it would be wise to create something that could generate you money. For example, real estate, rent out a house. You got that income coming in every month. If you're not in the market for housing, set up, maybe a remote job that you could do, that only requires you to have internet access. That way you're living in Gambia, but you're still being paid American dollars, which, once it's in your account, of course, you can, live comfortably in Gambia or wherever it is that you want to live. That's what I mean by things that are going to support sustainability. But then also, of course, if you're going to start something on the ground, you also need, even if you're coming over with a lot of money, at some point that money is going to be spent. So I would say try your best to create something that's going to bring in residual income that you could use as an investment to continue the business that you have going on in case it doesn't pop off and bring the finances in that you need right away. You know,
What did you do after you said you shut down the business after about a year? What did you transition to after that?
I have a lot of skill sets. So that's what I was that was one of the main reasons why I decided to come, because I'm not going to be down for long. That's just my attitude. So what I did was I partnered with a friend of mine, and he had a studio space. And there were things that I could do that he couldn't do. So I partnered with him, and we worked together on the studio, and because I had already had fame, if you will, there. I started putting the word out. Now that I have a studio, they knew that I did music. I just didn't have time to do it because I was running the restaurant. But I've been working in music over 20 something years. Over 15, 16 of those years, I was traveling around the country doing that, so forth and so on. But then also I started a consultant company, right? Because I had already proven that every business that I touched, could succeed. One of the first things that I did before I linked with my friend in the studio is I got word that there was a bakery that was going under, and that it was connected to a restaurant, and the restaurant was actually paying the salaries of the bakery for 5 months, and they were looking for a manager. So I humbled myself because, of course, coming from America, you make more than that, way, 4 or 5 or 6 times more than that a month. But, it was a great salary considering what the locals were being paid. So I took that management job and used it as an opportunity to impact the community more. What I mean by that is they had a nonprofit. So they were building hospitals. They were giving food to pregnant women who would sit out in the sun all day uh, um, uh, waiting to be cared for, and they didn't have food. So I wanted to get involved with that. I turned the business around. Well, the first 30 days, I was able to pay the salaries of the employees that were there. The second month, I was able to pay my salary and the salaries of those that were there. The third month, we started making profit. So I said all of that to say, even though I was no longer there, I stayed there about a year, built up some money, got equipment, for my studio, so forth and so on. But what I did was I started a consulting company because there were the local people, Americans and other people who had seen me, bring soul food to a sustainable place, move to another place, maintain that sustainability over a 2-year period, go into a bakery that was getting ready to, go under, turn that around. I stayed there for a year and then went into my studio business and got that running, to where it was paying for itself. So I just said, well, let me be a consultant part-time, and share with people what you can do to make your business successful. I had about 6 clients and they paid me some real money. It was like real euros and real dollars. It would just depend on what it was that they were asking. Some I consulted them for 8, 9 months. So these are the ways that I was surviving. I also moved into a home in a nice neighborhood, 3-bedroom home, and start renting out my rooms. When you're in a place where you gotta survive, you gotta be creative and come up with ways to survive. Failing is not an option. I'm not gonna die over here. I don't have no help. I mean, I got friends and I'm sure they would help me, but I mean, they got families, they have responsibilities and probably issues and problems that I don't know about. So I had to put myself, I told you I'm allergic to being broke, um, and there were times where it got really, really difficult, financially. I'm like, man, how did I end up in this place? And so, with that being said, there were a lot of ups and downs. But what I'm saying as an advice is go over there prepared to do what you have to do to sustain yourself to be there, and just instead of panicking, sit down, think, meditate, and research. Think, meditate, research, and figure out what can you offer. You got skill sets. What can you offer that the people need? So I was kind of like a Jamaican over there. I had several things going on.
We give thanks and praise for the Jamaican massive that have paved the way. Brook, 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 brook. But we definitely we have to acknowledge, we definitely have to acknowledge that it's a different mentality and a different mindset that you're speaking about, because there are those who get on some of these channels and ask questions like, what jobs can I apply for?
Mhm.
And this conversation is really highlighting the fact that this is not a job-centered type of venture in a sense. This is a create, you create the opportunities and you create the pathway for you to get whatever it is that you receive.
Absolutely.
So it's a different way that we have been trained mentally in the States, I would say,
Yeah.
because most of us have been trained by baby boomers who taught us to work 40 hours, don't call out, don't be late, get a pension, pay into a 401k. There's a loop, there's a mental loop that has run for a long time. But now we've learned that that's not necessarily the way, because you can do all that and still be in a messed up situation. So it's
Absolutely.
good to reiterate these things, to reiterate skill sets and what can you bring to the table, and how do you make a way out of no way. Um, let's talk a little bit about professionalism
Mhm.
because I don't think that many channels, many videos that I've ever seen talk about professionalism or maybe even lack thereof living in a place like West Africa or East Africa or South or North. That 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 is a that's something that needs to be said.
Mhm.
Um, professionalism on all accounts, what was your experience like in Africa as a professional? Now we're speaking of you as a professional, in observing the professionalism that's there and then demonstrating or offering that same level that one would be used to in a place like the States.
Very interesting question. I think very needful question, because I engage people from high officials in government all the way down to locals in the community, and was able to come in contact with various different levels of professionalism and various different levels of the lack thereof. Uh, both on a high level where you're supposed to be a professional and you're looked at as a professional, and vice versa. I've seen regular, local people be more professional than some, high ranking people. So vice versa. Um, in fact, there was one of the things that I tried to do was represent Gambia as an ambassador on the behalf of Italy, Germany, and America, because that's where the most of my viewers on my channel was coming from, and got all the way to the end, and it fell out of the bottom. I did everything that they wanted me to do in terms of the letters, uh, addressing the the high officials, so forth and so on. I gave them an extensive plan, you know, and of course, when you're doing business, it's important to you. For me, I'm a stickler on time. Um, so um, you know, that drug out for about 3, 4 months, and it could have been a 30-day process. But there were people in the chain who were not as professional. And they were not professional, in my opinion, and my assessment, because they didn't want to be. Not that they could not be and did not have a capacity to be, but they did not and would not, because of maybe the intimidation of someone uh, who they feel like is not from there, would come in and present services that could impact the whole country, um, and ask for a fee that would be astronomical in their eyes, but that would be worth it, and that the government had the budget for. But because they were not getting paid that, how dare someone come in from another country, and ask? I'm just telling the truth. I always been a straight A personality person. So whatever the comment is going to be is just what it is, you know. Uh, and then I've seen on lower levels, there was the last place that I lived, there was a little small restaurant, very, very small restaurant, maybe 8 people could fit in there, you know, um, who was so professional. I went there to eat every day, because they were so professional, so clean, so hospitable, so welcoming, so available, all of those things. Real, real small, hole in the wall place, and so all of that to say, and whatever you're doing, whatever service you offer, you know, be professional, you know, go beyond, excellence has a root word called excel. Anytime you're operating in excellence, no matter where you are on the planet, it's going to cause you to excel. It's going to give you rapport with people. And to me, people are the biggest wealth that we have on the earth. Relationships, is the biggest wealth that we have on earth. So that's my 2 cents about professionalism. It goes a long way. And even when you're in the middle and you're in the struggle, and you're losing money and all of these different things, one thing people will remember about you is your professionalism. And that's important because they'll remember at critical times. They'll remember when they need your services or when they need a service that you offer. The first person that's going to come to their mind is you because you were professional, and they could depend on your word. So that's
That's
how,
a very big deal. Yeah. And one thing that they say is people will always remember how you treated them.
yeah,
If you were rude, if you were nasty, or if you were kind, if you were patient.
yeah,
Those type of things really, really matter when we're talking about business specifically, because who wants to take their hard-earned money out their pocket and spend business-wise for people who, somebody who doesn't know how to speak to you. So there's just a lot to be said about professionalism. And I will say that my experience with professionalism in and across Africa, it is it is clear that we're operating at two different standards, being in the West and being in Africa. In the last podcast episode, um, we talked about just simple things that we had become unaccustomed to after spending years on the motherland. Like, simple things like somebody even refilling my glass of water before I had to ask. I didn't have to chase anybody down and say, hey, can I have some more water? Just that service, that bedside manner, um, is different. Even when it comes to medical, doctors not taking the time to explain things to their patients, that is characteristic of Africa. That's something that you're going to experience. If you're living in Africa, you're definitely going to experience a doctor, who come in and say, this, do this, do that, do that. Sir, first of all, what is my diagnosis? What is wrong with me? Am I gonna what? Hello? So those types of things, those types of demonstrations of professionalisms are things that we get used to being in the West.
yeah,
And then you come to the continent and you like, did she just walk past me with the menu 5 times and she didn't even ask me, or come to the table with no menu?
yeah,
Can
yeah.
I take your order? How am I supposed to order that? I don't have a menu, so it's different.
I'll share this with you. One of the ways that I got over that barrier was I tried to connect with the person. Now, it didn't work every time.
Mm-hmm.
When I connected with the person, I put myself in the place of a student
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to learn what I could learn from the skill sets that they did have.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of
Mm-hmm.
they had that was an advantage to me was the knowledge of the land,
Mm-hmm.
knowledge of the culture,
Mm-hmm.
growing up there,
Mm-hmm.
on what area to start a business in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A lot of them come to my aid and tell me, no, don't do business here or don't do business with this person because they know the people and they know the reputation. So there are a lot of things that you can do and navigate through, whereas they may not be as professional as your level of professional is. You can bring them to that place. There are a lot of people that I impacted that I think are better. There were even some people that I recommended to other Americans who have businesses, you know, um, and I was comfortable enough because I trained them myself, you know. Some of them didn't work out. So, over time, you don't know how long that professionalism is going to be there, but it's just something you have to deal with. I've come to a place in my life where every time I get ready to complain, I just look at the positive piece of it, and I just become the solution instead of a amplifier for the problem.
I love that.
I sit there and talk about it, the frustration all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I did an episode a while back called Sometimes You Just Gotta Do It Yourself.
Mm.
I mean, and so sometimes you just have to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
the problem and nobody's professional enough, nobody has the bandwidth enough to do it, figure out a way to do it and then figure out a way to animate it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that optimism.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the major keys to resilience. If you're not optimistic, you're not going to be resilient. You're not going to be able to bounce back because you're going to be focusing on what spilled and what broke and what went wrong,
Yeah.
versus focusing on what went right and how to capitalize off of what
When,
went
right.
right.
It's really, it's important, especially if you're gonna stay over a long period of time.
That part.
You gotta get used to the way things are. This
That part.
are. This is what they think. This is how they do business. This is how unprofessional they are. Blah,
Hello.
blah, blah. And then try to find the ones that have potential.
Exactly. Exactly. And you saying that says so much. So first thing you said is, if especially if you're going to stay long term, there's so many people who leave. Half the YouTube videos that people try to reference to me, I'm like, those people not even there. and
Yeah.
and and really, I have to admit that I do have a level of I do have a level of awareness about myself that kind of exceeds what I see from YouTubers, because they have not been to any other place. They don't have a breadth of experience that I can use if I am navigating several different terrains. The way that someone would operate in a place like Gambia has no relevance over where I live in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. The people are different. The systems are different. The culture is different. There ain't no naming ceremonies in Tanzania. You're not going to ever be invited to a naming ceremony. If you're expecting that, if you're looking forward to that based off of what you've seen YouTubers speak about, then you will be disappointed, because that's not their culture. So there's so much that people, kind of miss out on when they zero in too much on a channel or a YouTuber who doesn't really offer a breadth of experience, um, or uses a lot of generalized statements like, this is what you can expect in Africa, because it's not Africa, it's that specific place. Or maybe, even the concept that a place like um a place like Senegambia is very different from Gunjur, which is far out. You really have to start sifting in and getting deeper into what you need to know specifically in order for you to make it. And remember that it's not what you know in a place like Africa. It's really who you know. It's really who you know, because certain people come there and they know, the right people. They get aligned really quickly. They meet genuine people, positive people, people who protect them. And
Mhm.
then you never hear from them because they go off the map and they're with their people and they're in their community, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's places in Ghana that I've observed that they have a huge Hebrew Israelite community, and they come in and they lock into each other, and they are the resource. They are the guideline. They are the safety net. And so
Mhm.
they don't have to worry about some of the things that someone coming as a single mother or coming as a father, with kids, they don't have to worry about those things. So situations and circumstances are different, but I encourage people to really connect with someone before moving. That is my advice. I'm going to continue to make that advice. I'm going to continue to say to people to learn from the wisdom that we are offering. The other thing I wanted to add, well, and then just one other thing that you said, and speaking about optimism, I agree, with staying focused on positive, but I also know that in life we need balance. I have a few clients and people that I've interacted with as a spiritual life coach who have drove themselves crazy because they try to focus on positive only and would not allow themselves to acknowledge the negative. And what that does is it creates imbalance. It creates a terrible imbalance that can cause ramifications on the spirit.
Mhm.
I want to ask you about, any bizarre stories, any things that are just, kind of mind-blowing now that you have been there and then you've come back and you're in a different place, not as much survival, you're in your home base.
Mhm.
What are some things that now you can look back and be like, that was kind of bizarre. That was, you know,
Ah, um, I have many. I don't even know to start. Um,
pick one that'll help everybody, that everybody can be like, okay, that I got it.
I'll say this. I'll say, be intentional. Um, and this is gonna go over some people's head because some people just lack the ability to create. There are so many people that are into recreation instead of creating. For whatever reason, maybe because of the success that they see this person is experiencing, moving in this direction. So I want to replicate that, and that's okay to a degree, but I've seen a lot of stuff not last based on that because they really don't have the passion for it. They're really just doing that to garner the success that they feel like another person has, or is operating in. I think it's extremely important to be very clear on what it is that you want to do. One of the things that you spoke on also is just safety, and being able to connect with a group of people. I think everything worked for us so well because we don't meet strangers and we garnered so many friends and so many people that we could connect to. And it wasn't one-sided. It wasn't all Americans. It was UK. It was people from various different places. It was the locals as well. I think that comes from being able to discern what kind of spirit you're dealing with and what kind of energy you are around. And if you're not good at that, I would suggest start practicing, start working at because a skill like that is necessary in a foreign country. It's very, very necessary. So the safety, we've been flooded with all kind of YouTube channels talking about the deaths of people that we all know, that we all spent time with, that we all had a privilege to be around. And that was really bizarre for me because these people are like close to me. I mean, they came to my restaurant all the time. We talked on other different occasions. Even when I shut the restaurant down, I was in communication with some of them still, not as much, but, enough to know if they're okay. And then the next thing something happens and you realize they're gone. So it's like, when you look at that, you begin to understand the importance of having a community because you're going to go through something. You don't know what it is, but you're going to deal with something in Africa. you know, you definitely going to deal with something and it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard and you're going to need some level of support, you know. And so I would say definitely connect, especially single women, and women who just come by yourself, you know, most of the women that I know that are really to their self kind of people, I would say, break out of that to a degree and just create a little boundary to where you can connect with people who are moving in the same direction you're moving in. If nothing more than to they would notice if you wasn't online, you know, in the last week and care enough about you to check on you.
Right.
You know
And
what I
to
mean?
reach out.
There was one young lady who we all knew, and the way that they found out that she was deceased was they checked on her because she was connected.
Hmm.
And although she had been in her house for a few days,
Mm-hmm.
at least she was connected enough for somebody to care enough about, trying to find out why they hadn't heard from her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that would be my last little tidbit of advice is to definitely connect, and it can be difficult, but it's doable. You know,
Right,
it's doable no matter what country you're in, because at the
right.
you know it's safety is very important.
It's key.
Yeah,
It's key. Yeah, I definitely agree with you, and just, for anybody who's listening who doesn't already know, um, I have a group online for women. It's a women's only group. It's a women's only space that really is designed to help to keep us resourced and help to keep us in a safe position, because it can be challenging. There are a lot of single women moving to the continent. There are a lot of women who move there with children.
mm,
Even life after relationship, there are women who have moved there and moved, in relationship and then found themselves single. So, needing that support or needing that stronghold is a really big deal. So there are resources now, and I just posted that link in the live chat, and I will share that link also in the description box. So I kind of want to close it out, because
sure.
I know that we've been on a while, and there's so many great things that you have shared, and so many people on the live chat. I'm wondering if this is your fan base, if you brought them all with you or what. Um, I wanted to ask you about just advice. You mentioned in the beginning something about spiritual journey and spirituality,
Mhm.
and you didn't really elaborate on that. I don't really know what that means to you. Um, I don't know what you experience specifically that relates to your spirituality,
Mhm.
or to how you have seen yourself change. Maybe there's a change that you observe in yourself from before you came,
Mhm.
to where you are now. And before answering that, I will say that I have a whole video that I've posted on my channel about healing in Africa, because I do acknowledge and recognize that healing in Africa is different. It's definitely different. I know that a lot of people come to the continent with high hopes and dreams about leaving America, but a lot of them pack up their trauma, they pack up their issues, they pack up their mental challenges, they pack up their sicknesses before they leave, put that all in the suitcase with them, and then carry that on aircraft and bring that to the continent as well. So there's a process, and healing, it looks different for everybody, but I think what has to be acknowledged is, you know, all of us have healing to do, and all of us are in need. And by the time we make it to a place like the motherland, we have to be receptive spiritually to what the motherland has in whole for us. So
Yeah.
can you speak on what you had mentioned earlier about advice to others on a spiritual journey, or what that has to do? What does that have to do with living in Africa, or how you've seen your life and how you've seen your life change since
I,
living in Gambia?
I think it has to do with everybody, no matter where you are. One of the things that I will go, uh, throughout life embracing is this statement, and that is that people don't change dr drastically; they change gradually. Now, not everybody. You have the cases where people change drastically because of an experience, but normally people don't change drastically, they change gradually. So I think, and this is just my opinion, we need to take it easy on ourselves and also on others who come to countries, with baggage, because the hardest thing to do is to change a mindset. The hardest thing to do is to get away from the effects of the damage that has been done based on the dramatic experiences that they've gone through. I think my personal opinion on it is that somehow, people come and they're not rid of those things because they need help to get rid of those things. And if you don't have help, spiritual people who can guide you through, whether it be, a life coach. I'm a certified life coach. but somebody who can not only listen to you, but give you proven methods that will help you to deal with the trauma that you live with in your energy body. You know, it's pretty intense, to face those things. You got some things that people are buried that happened to them 10, 15 years ago, and they don't even know that they're still dealing with it until they get into a place like Africa. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, how do you know you healed so you can go? It's kind of like you just have to, you know, examine on a consistent basis yourself, be open to what can help you to change and deal with those traumas, and just do the best you can. It's just as simple as that. You gotta do the best that you can, and don't give up, you know. The way that I've changed to address that piece of it, I've changed in a lot of different ways. I knew that I was strong before I got to Africa, but I know a strength that I've never known before because I've had so many hurdles to get over. I've had so many things to overcome, and that list goes from betrayal to um, being set up to being fought spiritually, you know, to all kinds of different things. And I can't take credit for not losing my mind. All I can say is I did what I'm encouraging everybody else to do. I realize that you don't change drastically, you change gradually, which means that you deal with your healing day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, you know. Um, and you are open for things that can come in your life that will help you to learn the lesson. Some of the ways that I've done that is through meditation, um, uh, through sharpening my spiritual discernment, um, through verbalizing how I want to operate. And when I say verbalizing, I mean using the power of sound and vibration and speaking over myself, being intentional, uh, writing things down, because you lock things that are abstract in the spiritual realm, you lock them in time when you write them down, and that begins to manifest. That's just one of the keys. Um, I wrote a book, and the name of the book is called Trapped in the Past No More. So I did not realize how significant that book was until I got to Africa, and it helped me to free myself from the past. And now, when I say the past, I mean from traumas. People are literally stuck in a body of pain from traumas that they've experienced in the past. And instead of enjoying each precious moment that goes by, they're living in that time warp. They're living in the past, and every time they encounter something that reminds them of that pain, it just comes back. And so they need people like you. They need people who have worked and did the work and worked through through the hard places to lead and guide them and to show them. If it's not going to be because of that, then a lot of them won't change. They'll have to go the rest of their lives, dealing with the pain and continuing to relive that trauma over and over and over again until they're given, you know, uh, until they're given, uh, you know, the tools to break through, and to, continue to grow. But I've evolved in a major way, and coming to an end, um, in a lot of ways. I've evolved as it relates to dealing with people. I've evolved as it relates to dealing with trauma. I've evolved as it relates to dealing with enemies. I've evolved as it relates to dealing with people who appreciate me. It all has become very valuable to me because now I don't look at negative in the way that we're taught negative and positive is. I just look at it as I don't look at negative as bad and positive as good. I look at negative and positive as necessary. So it's necessary for you to learn the lessons that you need to learn in life, for you to strengthen your muscles in areas where you're weak. And I'll stop right there.
Yeah, we give thanks. Thank you so much for sharing those experiences with us. I'm hoping that um those who came and showed up for specific reasons have fulfilled those things that they came for, because there was so much that you're offering in a lot of these different shares. And the I guess the thing about it is understanding what role you play in this bigger picture is a very big deal. You know, I don't ever introduce myself lightly. I am Goddess Queen Jamila. And when people skip over and, hey Jamila, I
Mm,
didn't introduce myself to you in any other way but how I expect to be addressed, which is Goddess Queen Jamila. And I say that to say that that is something that I have found myself being empowered with in a place like Africa.
mm,
Africa has reminded me who I am, what I am, where I fall on the board, why I'm here, what it is that I can do, how I can show up. Um, there's so much that I continue to be affirmed by in this continent, and those are things that I never experienced living in the States. In the States, there was constantly a barrage of doubt and everything. And I found myself even relating to the States differently now after spending 4 years in Africa. When I'm here, I'm like, oh, I am different. I can see it now. I can see myself. I'm like, okay, I don't respond to family in the same way that I used to. I don't get irritated with things that used to be irritants. I don't even um find myself running on the rat race, that
mm,
wheel that I didn't do it good enough, and
mm.
that doesn't exist for me anymore. So there's so much growth to be experienced, especially once you're open to it. And that suggestion about getting a life coach is very valuable. I am a spiritual life coach. I am now an initiated priestess of Ifa, after spending time in Nigeria. And I work with women. That's who I've been called to work with. So I would love for you to share information about how one can get in contact with you, or even what you're doing now. If you want to share a little bit about what you're doing now, what people can come to you about now, and then how they can get in touch with you, and even how they can find your book.
Okay. Well, let me go through that real quick. So of course I have a channel. It's called Nkosi TV, Nkosi TV. If you want to communicate with me, you can do it that way. And just initiate the conversation that way, and we'll switch, emails, and different things of that nature. So Nkosi TV on YouTube. Um, you can get in contact with me that way. What I'm doing now is I'm really, really diving into doing documentaries and movies, and really getting back into the arts. I have a single that's getting ready to be released in the country, the United States, the first week in August. And after that, we'll follow my own personal documentary, along with a full scale project as far as music is concerned. Building back up my finances and trying to put myself in a place where I can come back to Gambia. I don't know if I'm gonna stay there on
Mm-hmm.
a long-term purpose way, because so many things are opening up for me here, and my mind
Mm-hmm.
shifted. That's one way that I've changed.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually now looking at the positive and not looking through the eyes of trauma when it comes to America, because there are some
Mm-hmm.
positive things that so I've changed in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm doing now is I'm taking advantage of it. Let's say, God forbid, war breaks out, here in next month. I mean, next year, 2025. I'm headed back to Gambia.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You know, I will visit Gambia again. I've met some really, really good friends there. Some people that seen me in a couple stages in my life, you know,
Mm-hmm.
prosperous stage, they
Mm-hmm.
not so prosperous stage,
Mm-hmm.
a survival stage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Their opinion about me didn't change. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the same, and they valued what I brought to the table.
Absolutely.
Or they seen me in that area. So I've grown to really love those people. I
Mm-hmm.
also know that I've changed from being here. I really didn't have a contrast because I
Mm.
wasn't going back and forth.
Right.
Literally stayed in Gambia for 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so in essence, I've only been in the country 4 months. I got here in February of this year. So so I've changed and so much that I don't feel comfortable here. You know,
Mm.
I mean, I feel more like I'm a Gambian than I feel like I'm American. And I know that's
Yeah.
weird, but it's just some experiences that I had there that like and let me say this. I when I left, I didn't leave because I had to leave.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't leave because I had to leave. I wanted to see my father. He's 82 years old, getting older. And I just heard something in his voice when he asked me to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was some, personal issues that I needed to take care of. I just needed to do a reset and
Mm-hmm.
out of that environment.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that would be the last piece of advice. Don't suffer in silence, man. Go back home to your family, the ones that love you, reset, and come back. I
Come
mean,
on, somebody.
my mindset was I felt like I failed when I came back.
Mm.
And so what I had to realize was no, I didn't fail.
Mm.
2.5 years of experience in a land that my ancestors were taken from.
Mm-hmm.
So even coming back, I'm going to be better than I am now.
Absolutely.
Know what to prepare for. I
Absolutely.
know the lay of the land. I still have the major connections that I had that
Mm-hmm.
when I was there. So it's going to be easier if I decide to come back to live. You
Mm-hmm.
know? But on the flip side, I didn't have an appreciation for America, and now I do. With all of the trauma that I've experienced here or whatever, I do still have some level of appreciation. In a lot of ways, I don't know if I could have made it in Africa if I hadn't gone through some of the things that I went through here, you know? So yeah, so that's what I'm doing. I'm doing film, I'm doing documentaries, I'm doing music, and a little life coaching as well. I haven't pushed it because I'm kind of on a journey where I want to deal with it when it's obviously necessary. If I'm called to help somebody from my experience, then, the universe puts it in my path and I connect with those people. So, if you want to get in contact with me, you can do it that way. I have not uploaded a lot since I've been back, on my YouTube channel, but I'm working on that. I'm putting droves and droves of content together that will share with you, those that are interested, what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I think that you should use your channel to put up a promo video of the footage that you recorded from me. And yeah, so people can really see
And
your skill level.
let me say that I appreciate that statement because people are stingy with their content, and competitive. And I appreciate that. I mean, because what it does is it gives an even energy exchange, you know. It exposes me to your listening audience, it exposes you to my listening audience, and then we grow together.
That's what this is about. We're not moving nowhere as one finger and one finger.
It's
Two,
not,
independent fingers, it's not, we're not picking up cups with that. We not counting money with an independent, it's just
Yeah.
If we've not learned anything else, and those of us, I'm speaking about those of us who have learned from
Yeah.
our experiences on the continent, especially, you know, we might have come from different places. I might have come from Oregon, and you know, you might have come from Ohio, you know, but we now share a common experience that has put us both in a position to be able to see things not just through that lens, that stateside lens, but through this African experience. And we've been able to see how villages, you know, made possible by compounds and
Mm,
extensive family connections and brother cousins, we've seen how those have been able to bring people further faster than they would have been able to do on their own. So we really give thanks and praise for the connections that we've made over time and how those have helped us in a bind and continue to help us. And you know, like I said, what are we doing if we're not working together and building? You know, there's a bigger picture, and we're just not going to get there if we're operating from a I individual place. And that's something that the states continue to perpetuate, individualism over community. So we really want to lean on the air of community. So again, thank you so much, Eric, for being here today. The only thing I think that you didn't give out was the information on your book, but I'll get the link from you and I'll actually put it in the description for anybody who wants to access that. So
okay.
thank you so much,
Okay.
and I'll see you soon.
All right.
All right, you all. So those of you who are listening, I hope that you have enjoyed today's podcast. This is Goddess Queen Jamila Asata Orset, and this is our series on life after America. You know, what it's like to actually have lived abroad, um, the lessons that you learn, the advice that you would give others, and what you would do differently if you had another opportunity to do it all over again. So I hope you've enjoyed. Please feel free to share, and you know, make sure you're subscribed or tuned in or whatever they say. But if you're a sister and you want to join our WhatsApp group, we have a WhatsApp group for Melanated Sisters, and that WhatsApp group has been posted in our YouTube podcast link, but I will also post it in any other podcast links where this audio is available. Again, Goddess Queen Jamila, author of Goddess Awakening. And you can always contact me if you're interested in setting up a retreat to the motherland, if you are looking to retreat to Tanzania, or if you're looking for teas and herbal tonics that help with fibroids, cysts, and other reproductive challenges. All right. Thank you so much for joining.